There is no solution in sight to stop the government from partially shutting down at midnight Friday. The White House and Congress have until then to agree on funding for the president's proposed border wall, which Democrats oppose. If the shutdown takes effect, it will be the third since President Trump took office. But what actually shuts down during a government shutdown, especially a partial one? A story published yesterday on CBSNews.com explains what a partial shutdown would mean for the government, its employees, and for the rest of us. CBS News White House reporter Kathryn Watson wrote that piece, and she joins me now from the White House. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so
hey, Anne-Marie.
I know that some departments have already been funded. So what departments would see their funding expire by midnight?
Sure. Well, like you said, Anne-Marie, there are a number of agencies, departments that are already funded through fall of next year. So some, like HHS, are completely protected. The ones that will be affected include key agencies, key departments, including the Department of Homeland Security, the Justice Department, Housing and Urban Development, some really major departments. Now, something that, of course, is being debated between the White House and on Capitol Hill is what to do over President Trump's proposed border wall. That, of course, is caught up in much of that funding. So that is what the debate is at the moment. And but I should note that it really may not affect the lives of your average everyday American if the shutdown, if it does happen, lasts for a short period of time.
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, so will the Postal Service will work, but what about some people who are depending on certain checks, I don't know, like pension checks and things like that? Will that be coming through?
Those are all supposed to go out as scheduled for anything that has to do with mandatory spending, with what are deemed essential services. I definitely want to highlight that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, which are not necessarily or are not a part of the affected agencies anyways, but those checks, no one needs to worry. Those services will be safe and will be protected. Like you said, Anne-Marie, the mail is going to go out on time and as scheduled. So some of those daily functions will not be affected. Some of the things that might be affected include things like people applying for new home loans through the federal housing authorities. Those could be something that we see could be swept up, could be delayed if there is indeed a shutdown. So some of those other operations like that, Department of Agriculture, some farmers who are looking to visit local and state Department of Agriculture stations as a part of their daily needs, those could be affected. So there are certainly some things that Americans could see.
So you talked about essential services. That means that some federal employees will have to go to work even though they're probably not going to get a paycheck.
That's right. The Senate Appropriations Committee estimates that a little over 400,000 federal employees would have to go to work without being paid. Now, those include many of the Customs and Border Protection officers, many of the Border Patrol agents that the president, of course, says he so strongly promotes and supports. There would be another roughly 380,000 federal employees who could be furloughed, meaning they would be sent home without pay, although it's always possible that Congress would decide to give them back pay. So it just means that depending on how long this shutdown occurs, if it does occur, that could affect some paychecks, have some delays in paychecks.
Speaking of the president, do we know what his plans are for the holiday and whether or not he could be affected by the shutdown?
Sure. Well, he has been planning to go to Mar-a-Lago as he does for major holidays like the Christmas season. He's expected to be there a couple of weeks. He's expected to leave later in the week. I asked one of the president's senior communications advisors, Mercedes Schlapp, yesterday if the president would be staying home if there is indeed a shutdown. And she just said, well, the president has no update, or I have no update to the president's plans at this point. Of course, that's going to be a little bit trying with the optics, a little challenging when it comes to optics if the president is in Mar-a-Lago at his very fancy club while, say, Customs and Border Protection officers and other federal employees are showing up to work without pay.
Exactly. That's so true. So here's the thing about the timing of the government shutdown. You know, it's coming on the eve of, a holiday. There's probably not a lot going on in the week between Christmas and New Year's. But after that, come January 3rd, when the Democrats take over the House, I mean, what could this mean in terms of ever resolving this shutdown?
Right. Well, one of the possibilities, or the most likely possibility to avoid a shutdown at this point in the game would be for some sort of short-term spending bill, what we call a continuing resolution or a CR, that would fund the government at the current levels just until the beginning of the year. Now, Congress comes back into session after the holidays at the very beginning of the year on the 3rd. Now that is, as you said, when Democrats will take control of the House. Then, it's really not the first thing that Nancy Pelosi wants to be dealing with when she presumably takes up the role as Speaker once again. But, they're eventually going to have to come to some sort of long-term funding agreement. It's most likely that the real battle will begin in January.
Yeah, well, hopefully something gets resolved. Like you said, it might not impact sort of regular people all that much, but all those government workers who are counting on those paychecks so they can pay for those, holiday and Christmas gifts, they're going to want this thing resolved. Kathryn Watson, thank you so much.
Thank you.